Okay, let's get started. In this video, I'm just going down the list that we have of things that need to be done for you guys so all of you at least have some help in your systems. You can hear the moaning in the background. That is Bailey. She's my little girl, my little puppy, my little basset. She's like the world is ending. So let's start by creating a floor plane. I always like to reset it so that it's in the right place. I'm going to scale this up like 555. Number lock is off. Let's try that again. I'm going to rename this to floor. Okay, so a first-person shooter or first-person game, depending on how you want to set it up. I normally set it up by creating an empty game object, because if it's got a body or if it doesn't have a body, I'm doing this whole floating arm kind of situation. So create an empty game object. Again, reset it to 0 over here. And I'm going to rename this to FPS player. And we're going to add a capsule collider so we don't go through anything when we're playing this game. Remember, now we're in 2D, 3D, so we need to have a capsule collider. Open this up, and I'm going to make the capsule collider. Let's make this guy about 1.8 meters tall, which means I need to offset the Y by that half of that value. So 0.9, so that he's above the ground. Radius, 0.5 meter, sounds reasonable. We'll leave it for now like that. Okay, there's my little guy. He's going to move. I'm going to grab the camera. I'm going to parent it to the character. And I'm going to reposition the camera, reset it so that it's back at the base. And I'm going to put this at about 1.7 in height. So basically around about, hopefully around about eye line. And so that's the basic setup. And depending on how you're moving it, I'm going to be using rigid bodies and forces to move this character around. So I'm adding a rigid body. And I'm going to make sure I freeze all the rotations. I'm going to use gravity in this case, that's fine. I'm going to change the collision detection to continuous speculative so we get a better result based on that. I had a capsule card, that's it. So we're going to do this character twice. So I'm going to essentially just press F2 to rename this and call this one underscore bolt. I'm going to do this one in bolt, and we're going to do this one in code. Sorry, I spelled it wrong, messed up again. Okay, so we're going to start with the bolt one, then we're going to move on to the standard one. So with the bolt one, we need to add a flow machine. At this point, make habit of creating prefabs. So I'm going to drag this and create a prefab. You never know when you want to instantiate the player into the level or respawn him or whatever the case may be. Okay, so let's create a new flow machine. Let's call this FPS bolt. We'll need a few variables. We'll need player speed as a variable so we can control his speed. We'll make this about 100, I think. We will need, well, it's not jumping yet, so I'm just going to do basic movement. We'll need a reference to the camera. So let's just call this cam. Do a transform because I just want to update the camera's transform, and I'm going to drag the camera into here. I want to make sure I apply this to my prefab after each stage, so we have a reference to the player speed and the player camera so we can move around. Okay, so let's get going. We're going to remove this, and again, as you've probably watched on 1,000 tutorials online, you want to have your actual physics related stuff in a fixed update. So we're going to get the inputs up here, and we're going to feed it into the fixed update over here, which allows me, it reminds me I need one more variable. Let's call this input. And we're going to make this a vector 2. So I only need the X and the Y movement, so I don't need any of the other movements. That'll be fine. Okay, so we're going to keep to the old input system for now until next year when hopefully they release the full version of it and Bolt supports it. But for now, we're just going to do the input dot get axis. We're going to call this horizontal. This is going to be our side-to-side movement. I'll copy and paste this, and I'm going to do this. Let's do this underneath each other so it's easier to understand. So I'm just going to add a sequence node here. So we can do them one on top of the other, so there's no confusion on what we're doing here. So the top one, we're getting the side-to-side movement. The bottom one, we're going to get the vertical movement. Okay, so what we want to do here is when we get this, we actually want to multiply this value, because this value is going to either be between -1 and 1, and if your character moves at 1 unit, it's going to be really slow. So we want to be able to take that, multiply that by my player speed, that. So we're going to copy this for the bottom one. We might as well do both at once so that we get the character. And just to make sure we don't have frame dependent movement, we have independent frame movement, so that whether the frame rate drops or doesn't, we will still get the same result. We actually will do that in the bottom. Actually, we'll leave this as it is. Very good point. We're going to drag the input, holding down Alt to get the set variable. We're going to plug this in, and again, I'll talk about what I was thinking now when the time comes, so don't worry too much about that. I'm going to drag out this, and I'm going to do a vector 2.new new vector 2. Oh crap. Give me a new vector 2. Damn it. Sorry. Let's just see. See if I can find it here real quick. Create. There we go. It's create, especially when it's using human naming. And what's really nice about this is my X movement. This is my Y movement. And we now have both of the variables set up. So now we have the input to continue with. So I'm going to put a comment around this. Remember, we are just doing movement now, so this is going to be movement. We're not even doing mouse input just yet. So we're just doing a standard movement. And down here, we're going to actually do the drag out. We're going to type in velocity, and we're going to look for rigidbody.set velocity. I'm going to drag out of this, so we're going to create a new vector 3 xyz. And this time we're going to grab the input. I'm going to type in vector 2.x. I'm going to drag in vector 2.y. Because remember, we want to split these out because we don't necessarily, though the Y movement we don't want, we want the character to fall off a ledge if he falls off and dies. So we want to have gravity handle that section. Okay, so before we put these in here, we want to multiply them by something called time.fixed delta time. Now, if you were doing this in the update, it would just be standard delta time, but because we're doing it in the fixed update, we want to use fixed delta time. So we're going to do that for both of them. That way allowing me to make sure that my movement doesn't get affected by my frame rate. There we go. Okay, so that's the movement done. So we're going to just do one more thing for this section here. We're going to type in body.velocity. We want to get the velocity, and all we care about is the vector 3.y. So all we care about is the gravity of the situation. There we go. That should give us movement. So let's see. I'm going to split the screen so we can watch it there while watching it there. There we go. I'm moving back and forward, left and right. It's working. Nice. Now, I have just kind of grab this and put it into here, but what I do really want to do is, actually we'll tackle that when the time comes. Let's get the rotation working so I can show you what the actual problem is, and then from there we can sort that problem out. Okay, so let's get rotation moving. So let's just put a comment around this. Again, we have to revisit this. This as velocity-based movement, so that we know that that's the kind of movement we're doing. And in the update, we need to figure out what they've called it. So let's go project settings, go to input, and I think it's called mouse X and mouse Y. That's the name of the side-to-side movement of the mouse and the up and down. So side-to-side we want to rotate, up and down we're going to want to look up and look down. So let's do that. But first we need to create a new variable. Let's call this mouse input. And again, we're going to make this a vector 2. We're just going to copy and paste this. We'll do all the X's at the top here. So this one's going to be mouse X. Might as well do a sequence all over again here. You don't have to do these sequences. I'm just trying to do it so that it's easier to read this code. So mouse X is the side to side of your screen, so if your mouse goes from left to right. Mouse Y is if your mouse moves up and down. There we go. Now we're going to store this into a variable just like we did here. So I'm just going to copy these two and paste it here. And what's nice about this is I can just change the variable I want to change the input for. Plug mouse Y, mouse X, and plug that into there. And we have now got our input for our rotation. Cheapers. Let's add a group here, and let's call this mouse input. And then we're going to just feed it off the... See, now the rotational value should be fine in the update because it's not using velocity. So I am just going to copy this update here. Let's put it here. Let's actually just separate these two systems completely. Okay, so what's really nice about visual scripting like this, or at least in Bolt, it allows me to just copy and paste updates everywhere. Anyone who's worked in code or something like Blueprint inside of Unreal, you can't have duplicates of your events. It just doesn't allow that to happen. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if this or... Where is my or? Why am I not doing an or? Let's do a not equal. It's going to be easier. Not equal. So we're going to say if this is not equal, and copy and paste this. And if this is not, so I only do rotation only when we need the rotation. A lot of the stuff I always like to put if statements in front, just so that all these calculations don't constantly happen all the time, only when the character is moving. So I like to double check these things. I like to do checks just to allow for performance to be better. So if this is not equal to 0, and that's not equal to 0, we're going to do an OR this time. Thank you. Branch. So what we're saying in this line of code here is we're saying if the input is not equal to 0 and this input is not equal to 0, either one of these, because we're using the OR, then we're going to start rotating the camera based on our movement. We're going to rotate, 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 that kind of thing. Okay, we need a speed for, we're going to call this rot speed, or actually call it look speed. this a float, and again we probably want to, I don't know, let's say 10. I have no idea, to be completely honest. There we go. We're going to drag this value in. And we're going to now combine the following. So this mouse X is going to control the camera's rotation. Mouse X is going to control the character's rotation. Mouse Y is going to rotate the camera's rotation. So we need to remind ourselves that that is what we're doing here. So let's start by doing the side-to-side rotation and then moving on to the other one. Okay, so you could do something like a transform.rotate. And it will allow you to rotate while you're moving by this value. I'm going to take this value. We're going to multiply it by the x because the x is a side-to-side movement. So whether that value is going to be positive or negative. And again, this is only going to be affecting the y rotation. This section right here. So we don't want to do any other rotations. We're not making a plane where it's going to yaw and pitch and roll and all that stuff. It's just the character's rotation that's going to update based on the mouse movement. So let's see how this goes. It might be too fast, so bear with me. Okay, so when my mouse is not on my hand's not on the mouse, everything should be good. Oh, sorry, I spelled mouse Y wrong. Let's end the game and start again. See, so I look right, I look left. Now think of that look speed as your sensitivity for your. There we go. So we can now notice how when I move, that way it's fine. The moment I look right and I press forward, I go the wrong direction. Okay, so we want to fix that. We want to be able to fix that properly before we even continue with anything else. So we need to make sure our movement is based on our camera position, or in this case, our character rotation. So before we even update the input here, we're going to go right-click and type in transform direction. We're looking for transform direction over here. Okay, we've got the direction, we've got the input here that's coming from the controls. Now, how this node works is it's saying, okay, so what are the inputs? We're saying here are the inputs, and it says, cool, where is the camera? So that's where we have our, or in this case, I want to get the player. So we're going to drag here, we're going to type in self. Probably going to get an error in this, bear with me. So we're saying, get in relation to the rotation of the camera, or in this case, the rotation of the base. Find out the inputs and make sure that the inputs are always relative to where we're looking. So right will always be right of camera, left will always be left of camera, forward will be away from camera, and backwards will be towards camera. So we want to make sure that that actually works, and that is properly set up. So I'm looking around. If I look that way and I push forward, I now go forward in the direction that I'm looking. And left will always be left, right will always be right, and there we go. We have a fully functioning first-person controller as far as side-to-side rotation, and the movement is pretty much set up here. So we don't have to revisit the movement just yet. I'm going to add some little camera shake and stuff like that. So look, not camera shake, like a little bit of a walking animation, if you will. Okay, so now that we've done this, we need to update the X rotation. So we're going to copy and paste this. I'm going to put this here. And remember what I said? We're rotating the camera's Y. So we're going to say, grab the camera, plug the camera where it says self. I want to actually update the camera's Y, X rotation. Yes, I think it is. Plug that in, and we're going to do that by doing the exact same thing here. You could do a sensitivity X, sensitivity Y, but I'm not too bothered with that. It's just, like I said, this is just an example. You would just have one look speed X, one look speed Y. And we're going to grab that, plug it in there. And that should do it. Now this is the quickest. There's so many ways of doing the same thing, so this is just one of the many ways, not one the only way. Now the controls might be inverted, so we're going to see. There we go. I look up, I can move around. Now the controls are inverted here. But it's working really well, so what we need to do is, all I'm going to do just in this case is I'm going to invert the controls by essentially, I think I can invert the look speed, so let's just multiply this by a -1. Let's give that a shot, see what happens, shall we? You'll probably notice I do a lot of coding in small sections. Do something tested, do something tested. I've found in the past if you just go one way in your coding and you're feeling extremely confident about what you're doing, that's when you end up having problems, and then you also end up having lots and lots of things that you need to fix because you spend 2 or 3 hours coding without actually testing along the way. I do prefer to test along the way, make sure everything is working. There we go. Up is up, down is down, left is left, right is right. There we go. I can run around, look around. There we go. See, so it's working. Nice. Okay, so FPS controller set up. I'm going to do a few beautification things. Now, I could show you Cinemachine and all that stuff to kind of do, like, it's really powerful. It's also a really nice tool, but it also requires installing another package and learning another aspect of Unity, which I don't want you guys to learn at this point. But I'm going to show you something we have dealt with, so it should be a little bit simpler. I'm going to add some camera shake. So I'm going to select my camera, and I'm going to add an animator to this camera. And in the animations here, I'm just going to right click and create a new animator. Let's call this camera. Let's just call it cam animator. I'm going to add the animator directly to the camera because this is what I'm going to be doing some camera shake on, if you will. And I'm going to select the camera, go to Window, Animations, open up the animation window. We're going to dock it down here so I can do some animating. And most of you do use Blender, Maya, whatever kind of software you want to use. This is very much the same. At the bottom here, you have your dope sheet and you have your curve editor. So I'm going to click Create. This one's going to be called Cam Idle. I just need the camera in its idle position. So we're not going to do anything but other just then move the camera up and down. So I'm going to click on Add Property, Transform, and we're just going to keyframe the position of the camera. So this is my idle animation. That means when I'm standing still. You might want to add a breathing animation, whatever it is that you want to do. And then I'm going to create a new clip, and this is going to be called Cam Walk. And this is where we're going to add some animation for the position. And I'm just, again, I'm going to be timing this by eye. I'm going to probably tweak the crap out of this. So I'm going to go up a little bit. I need to go a little bit higher, but I don't want to go too high. I do want you to be able to see it. Okay, that might be dipping a bit much, but it's okay. But it seems a little bit slow, so I'm going to speed it up to about 30 frames. No, that's also too fast now. Let's try 40. Also depends. You might need to use, I can speed and mess around with this animation. So let's see, where is it? 0, 1.7. We don't really step to 2 meters when we walk, shall we? Let's go 1.9 there. Unless you're walking from heel to toe type situation. Okay, so I'm just going to go and take a look at my curves quickly. They seem reasonable. They seem okay. That's it. So I have now my walking animation and I have my running animation. I'm going to open up my animator and make sure that I can set this up correctly. I'm just going to move my exit up here, move my idle, and like anyone who's seen like has been in one of my classes knows that I really enjoy using my blend tree. So I'm going to right click and create a new blend tree in state. I'm going to call this locomotion. I'm going to double click on this blend tree, open it up, and we're just going to do a one-dimensional blend tree based on whether the character is moving or not. So I'm going to rename this parameter here to speed, like that, and I'm just going to take this value and I'm going to add a motion field, add another motion field. The first one's going to be my idle, cam idle, and the other one's going to be my cam walk. And it's going to be between 0 and 1, so when the character is standing still, it's going to be playing idle. When he gets to full walking speed, he's going to be playing his little bouncing animation. That's it. So let's do that in here. So we're going to do it in the movement section right here. So we're going to go, wait, because the animator isn't on this character, we need to go and make a reference to it. So we're going to say cam animator ref. I'm also just going to do an animator variable so that we can access the animator. We can click on here. I want to select the main camera because that's where the animator's on. I'm going to drag this in and we're going to go and say animator.set float. I think we called it speed. Again, I will go and double check that, but I cannot remember really at this point. Been doing a lot of videos for a few. There we go, speed. There we go. That's it. Okay, so now we need to input a value in here of what the speed is. So what I'm going to do is just do a get velocity. Cheapers. So we're looking for a rigid body.get velocity. So rigid body.get velocity. I'm going to drag off here and I'm going to get a square magnitude. Now what a magnitude does is it gets all of these values and gives me a single value out, a float, if you will. An absolute, but the problem with this is it's going to be positive or negative. And my blend tree is set from 0 to 1, so I always want my value to be absolute. Meaning it's whether it's positive or negative, or it's always going to give me a positive value is what I'm trying to say. So let's test this out. I'm probably going to have to clamp this value, but like I said, it's not a huge train smash. Let's say camera animation. There we go. Let's test this out. Let's go out of here. Let's just double click on the blend tree so you can see. So currently, if you look at the camera, we're currently in the idle state. Notice how the animation's working. Drops down, it goes to idle. You'll see that the value is 0. There we go. So we got this little walking animation. It's played in full screen mode so you can kind of get a feel for it. Oh, jeepers. Maximize and play. Thank you. So I look around. I can walk. As I walk, notice that little bobbing animation. When I stop, bobbing animation stops. Now, what's nice about blend trees, and the reason I like using them, is it does some really nice blending for me, and it just feels very fluid. And if you do your animations just right, you should have absolutely no issues with animating like in and out of different states. But you'll get a really nice smooth. There we go. Okay, the animation up and down is a bit much, but I mean, I guess it's a game, so you want to just push it a little bit. But there you go. I can look up, I can look down, I can look around, walk. That's it. That is my FPS system set up using Bolt. I'm going to save at this point. Please save before you play. A lot of stuff. Unity is doing weekly updates, so Unity can have moments where it will fall over and then you'll lose information. Okay, so that's it for this video. I'll come back into the next one. Thanks guys so much. I hope this helps.